It was supposed to be an ordinary day for young Emily Hayes, just another trip to the bus stop with her loyal dog, Max. But life had changed since the cartel moved into the region. What should have been a quiet morning turned into a terrifying confrontation, forcing Emily to rely on an unlikely hero. Max wasn't an ordinary pet. He was a K-9 veteran with a lethal set of skills. In this story, secrets are exposed, alliances are tested, and survival depends on the instincts of a well-trained protector. The sun had barely risen when Emily slipped out of the front door, her backpack slung over her shoulder. The ranch was quiet, save for the distant rustle of wind through the fields. Max, her large German shepherd, followed close behind, always alert. Emily trusted Max with her life. He had been her companion for as long as she could remember, and she often joked that he was more than just a dog. Her mother, a former Marine sniper, had trained Max herself. The bus stop was a quarter-mile down the dirt road, a small bench under a leaning oak tree. Emily reached it and sat down, waiting for the familiar hum of the school bus engine. Max sniffed the air and paced nearby, his ears twitching at every distant sound. Emily spotted the black SUV long before it reached the bus stop. It moved slowly, tires crunching on the gravel road. Max's growling caught her attention, and she stiffened. The SUV came to a stop a few yards away, and two men stepped out. One was tall and scar-faced, wearing a smirk that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "Hey there," the man called, walking toward her. "Waiting for the bus?" Emily said nothing. She stood and stepped behind Max, her heart pounding. "No need to be scared," the man continued. "We just want to ask a few questions. Your parents wouldn't mind, would they?" Max barked, a warning that echoed across the empty road. The man hesitated, his smirk fading. "That's a nasty mutt you've got there. Might want to keep him under control." "He doesn't like strangers," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Well, that's too bad," the man muttered. He glanced at his partner, who nodded and reached into his jacket. Before the second man could draw his weapon, Emily discreetly tapped Max on the collar, a signal her mother had taught her. In an instant, Max lunged forward with a speed that caught both men off guard. He clamped his powerful jaws around the scar-faced man's wrist, twisting just enough to force him to drop to his knees. "Jesus!" the man screamed. His partner fumbled with a pistol, but Max moved faster, releasing his first target and lunging at the armed man. With precision, Max knocked the weapon from his hand and shoved him to the ground. The man cried out in pain as Max stood over him, growling low and steady. Emily grabbed the fallen gun and tossed it into the bushes, her hands shaking. She looked at the two men, now sprawled on the ground, terrified and humiliated. "You need to leave," she said, her voice firm. "Now." The scar-faced man struggled to his feet, cradling his injured wrist. He glared at Emily. "You have no idea who you're messing with, kid. You think your dog's going to protect you forever?" He pulled out a radio and spoke rapidly in Spanish. "Backup. Send backup now. We found the girl." Emily's eyes widened. She could already hear the distant rumble of approaching engines. Max barked and nudged her, urging her to move. "Come on, Max. We need to get out of here," she whispered. Together, they ran toward a hidden trail that led deeper into the woods. As they ran, Emily's mind raced. Who were those men? Why were they after her? She had heard rumors about cartel activity in the area, but she never thought it would come this close to home. Max stayed close, his body tense and alert. He led her through the dense underbrush, guiding her toward a safe spot they had used before, a small abandoned barn near the edge of the property. By the time they reached the barn, Emily was gasping for breath. Max, however, remained calm, his sharp eyes scanning the area. Emily pulled out a radio her Uncle John had given her for emergencies. "Uncle John, this is Emily," she said, trying to steady her voice. "The cartel? They're here. They found me at the bus stop." "Emily?" John's voice crackled through the radio, filled with concern. "Are you hurt?" "No, but they're looking for me. Max and I are hiding near the old barn." "Stay put," John ordered. "We're coming to get you. Don't move." Emily barely had time to catch her breath before she heard the roar of engines again. The cartel reinforcements had arrived. Another SUV pulled up near the bus stop, and several more armed men began searching the area. "They won't stop until they find us," she whispered, gripping Max's collar. Max gave a low bark and moved toward the entrance of the barn, standing guard. Emily knew he was ready to defend her, but they couldn't hold out forever. She needed to buy time until her family arrived. Outside, the cartel men shouted orders, spreading out as they searched the woods. One of them spotted tracks leading toward the barn. "Over here," a voice called. Emily's heart sank. "Max, we have to do something." Max seemed to understand. He left Emily's side and circled around the barn, using the tall grass to stay hidden. Emily watched as the men approached, their footsteps growing louder. She crouched behind a stack of crates, her breathing shallow. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. One of the cartel scouts had been ambushed by Max, who knocked him to the ground with a powerful leap. Another scout fired wildly into the darkness, but Max was already gone, slipping back into the shadows like a ghost. "Get that damn dog," the leader shouted. But it was too late. Max had disrupted their formation, giving Emily the time she needed. She grabbed the radio again. "Uncle John, they're close. Please hurry." "Hang tight, Emily. We're almost there." The cartel's search party was in disarray. Max continued his hit-and-run tactics, keeping them off balance. Meanwhile, the distant sound of roaring motorcycles echoed through the trees. Emily smiled through her fear. Her family was coming, and the cartel was about to learn just how wrong they were to target the Hayes Ranch. The sound of engines echoed louder as John Hayes and a group of bikers rode toward the barn. Dust kicked up behind them as they sped along the narrow dirt road. John's face was grim, his jaw set in stone. He knew this was no ordinary rescue. The cartel had crossed a line by going after his niece, and now they were going to pay the price. In the barn, Emily crouched behind a crate, clutching the radio tightly. Max stood at the entrance like a sentinel, his sharp eyes fixed on the approaching cartel enforcers. The men were getting closer, flashlights cutting through the early dawn shadows. "We've got tracks," one of them said. "They're here somewhere. Spread out." Max gave a low growl, his muscles tensing. Emily whispered softly, "Just a little longer, boy. Uncle John's coming." The sound of engines echoed louder as John Hayes and a group of bikers rode toward the barn. Dust kicked up behind them as they sped along the narrow dirt road. John's face was grim, his jaw set in stone. He knew this was no ordinary rescue. The cartel had crossed a line by going after his niece, and now they were going to pay the price. In the barn, Emily crouched behind a crate, clutching the radio tightly. Max stood at the entrance like a sentinel, his sharp eyes fixed on the approaching cartel enforcers. The men were getting closer, flashlights cutting through the early dawn shadows. "We've got tracks," one of them said. "They're here somewhere. Spread out." Max gave a low growl, his muscles tensing. Emily whispered softly, "Just a little longer, boy. Uncle John's coming." Before the cartel could close in on the barn, the sound of motorcycles roared through the woods. The cartel leader froze, his flashlight beam jerking as he scanned the trees. "What the hell is that?" one of the men muttered. Suddenly, John and the bikers burst onto the scene, surrounding the cartel reinforcements. The headlights from their motorcycles illuminated the area, casting long, menacing shadows. The cartel men hesitated, realizing they were outnumbered. John dismounted from his bike and raised his voice, cold and commanding. "You made a mistake coming here. This is your one chance to leave. Walk away now, or you won't get another." The cartel leader sneered, trying to mask his fear. "You think you scare us? We've got backup on the way. You're out of your depth, old man." John stepped forward, his hand resting on the grip of his pistol. "Backup's not going to help you. This is my land. You threatened my family. Now you answer to me." The bikers spread out, weapons in hand, ready for a fight. The tension in the air was suffocating. Both sides waited for the first move. Inside the barn, Emily peeked through a crack in the wall. Relief washed over her when she saw her uncle and his crew standing their ground. "They're here, Max," she whispered. Max barked once, as if acknowledging her words. He remained alert, his ears twitching at every sound. The cartel leader, realizing he couldn't retreat without losing face, raised his hand and barked an order. Take them out. Gunfire erupted, shattering the stillness of the morning. The bikers scattered, taking cover behind trees and rocks. John ducked behind a fallen log and returned fire, his shots precise and deadly. Danny, one of John's closest friends and a former Marine, shouted over the gunfire. They've got more firepower than I expected. We need to flank them. Joanna, take Maddox and circle around the ridge. John ordered. On it. Joanna replied, leading Maddox and a few others toward higher ground. The firefight intensified, bullets tearing through branches and kicking up dirt. The cartel pressed forward, hoping to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers. But the bikers held their ground, using their military experience to outmaneuver the attackers. Inside the barn, Emily covered her ears as the gunfire echoed around her. She could feel the vibrations of every shot through the floorboards. Max remained by her side, his body tense and ready to protect her at a moment's notice. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the radio. It was John. Emily, are you okay? I'm fine, she whispered back. Max is with me. Good. Stay put. We've got them pinned down, but it's going to get messy. Outside, Joanna and Maddox reached their position on the ridge, giving them a clear view of the battlefield. Joanna took aim and fired, hitting one of the cartel gunmen who had been advancing on John's position. Got one, she called out. Keep the pressure on them. John shouted. The cartel was beginning to falter. Several of their men were wounded, and the rest were losing morale. The bikers capitalized on the confusion, pushing them back toward their vehicles. You picked the wrong family to mess with, Danny growled, firing off another round. The cartel leader, realizing he was losing control of the situation, grabbed his radio and shouted, We need extraction now. We're pinned down. As the firefight raged, one of the cartel scouts broke away from the main group and approached the barn, hoping to use Emily as leverage. He slipped through the side entrance, his footsteps barely audible on the dirt floor. Emily froze when she saw the shadowy figure moving toward her. The man raised his weapon, a cruel grin on his face. End of the line, kid, he sneered. Before he could take another step, Max lunged from the shadows, his powerful jaws clamping down on the man's arm. The scout screamed as Max dragged him to the ground, knocking the weapon from his hand. Emily scrambled to her feet and shouted, Max, hold! The dog released his grip, but remained poised to strike again if necessary. The scout writhed in pain, clutching his injured arm. Stay down, Emily warned, her voice shaking but firm. Outside, the bikers intensified their assault. John fired a warning shot that shattered the windshield of the cartel leader's SUV. The man ducked and cursed loudly. We're done here, he shouted to his men. Fall back. The cartel soldiers retreated to their vehicles, dragging their wounded with them. Engines roared to life as they sped away, leaving behind a scene of chaos and defeat. John stepped out from cover, his eyes narrowing as he watched the SUVs disappear over the horizon. They'll be back, he muttered. Danny approached and clapped him on the shoulder. Not anytime soon. We hit them hard today. Yeah, John agreed. But this isn't over. As the dust settled, John signaled for the rest of the team to regroup. He walked toward the barn, where Emily and Max emerged cautiously. You okay, kid? He asked, kneeling to hug her. Emily nodded. Thanks to Max. He saved me. John smiled and ruffled the dog's fur. Good boy, Max. You earned yourself a steak tonight. Max wagged his tail, his job done for now. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. The Hayes family knew the cartel wouldn't give up easily, but they also knew they weren't alone. With Max, their loyal protector, and their allies by their side, they were ready for whatever came next. The cartel's SUVs roared down the dirt road, retreating from the battle near the barn. Inside the lead vehicle, the cartel leader fumed in frustration. His men were battered, demoralized, and injured. He cursed under his breath as he grabbed his radio. Contact headquarters, he barked. We need reinforcements. I want every resource we have to hunt these people down. No more games. His second-in-command hesitated. But sir, they've got trained fighters in that dog. I don't care, the leader snapped. We underestimated them. Not again. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, John Hayes knew that the cartel wasn't going to let this loss go unanswered. The bikers were refueling their vehicles and patching up wounds. Danny and Joanna joined John near the barn, where Max lay resting beside Emily. "They'll be back," Joanna said, crossing her arms. "This was just a scouting party. They'll regroup and hit us harder." John nodded. "We need to stay ahead of them. If they catch us flat-footed, it's over." As they prepared for the next step, Travis, one of the bikers and their tech specialist, jogged over, holding a small device. His face was grim. "You're not going to like this," he said. "I found this attached to Max's collar." Emily gasped. "A tracker?" Travis nodded. "They've been tracking you this whole time. That's how they found you at the bus stop." John's expression hardened. "Damn it. They're using GPS. That explains how they've been one step ahead of us." Danny cursed under his breath. "If they know where we are, we can't just sit around waiting for them to attack." "No," John agreed. "But now that we know, we can use this to our advantage." "How?" Emily asked. John thought for a moment before replying. "We'll make them think we're somewhere else. We'll leave the tracker on Max and send him on a decoy route. While they're chasing ghosts, we'll hit them where it hurts." The team wasted no time. Travis reprogrammed the tracker to send false location signals while Max was sent with a few bikers toward a remote canyon far from the ranch. However, the cartel wasn't going to fall for tricks so easily. Unknown to John's team, the cartel leader had anticipated a decoy maneuver. He had set up an ambush along one of the back roads leading to the canyon. As Max and the bikers rode through the narrow pass, gunfire erupted from the cliffs above. "Ambush!" Maddox shouted, pulling his motorcycle to a stop behind a boulder. Max barked fiercely, sensing the danger. The bikers scrambled for cover as cartel soldiers rained bullets down from the high ground. "We've got to get out of here," one of the bikers yelled. Maddox grabbed his radio. "John, it's a trap. They were waiting for us. We're pinned down." At the ranch, John's face darkened as he listened to the transmission. "Damn it. They saw through the decoy." Joanna paced anxiously. "We need to pull them out of there before it's too late." "We'll hit them from behind," John said, his mind racing. "Joanna, get the rest of the team ready. We're going to flank those bastards." "On it," she said, grabbing her rifle. John and the remaining bikers sped toward the canyon, determined to rescue their friends. Emily wanted to follow, but John placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Stay here," he said. "You and Max have done enough. Let us handle the rest." Emily reluctantly nodded. "Be careful, Uncle John." "I will," he promised. Despite the ambush, Max refused to stay pinned down. He darted through the hail of gunfire, using the terrain to his advantage. He climbed a narrow ridge and launched a surprise attack on one of the cartel snipers, knocking him off balance. The sniper's fall caused confusion among the attackers, giving the bikers an opening to regroup. "That dog's a damn lifesaver," Maddox muttered as he fired at the distracted gunman. Max returned to Maddox's side, growling lowly as if awaiting further instructions. "Good boy," Maddox said. "Now let's get the hell out of here." Before the cartel could fully regain control, John's team arrived, launching a surprise attack from the opposite side of the canyon. The sound of roaring engines and gunfire echoed through the narrow pass as the bikers overwhelmed the ambushers. John took down 2 cartel soldiers with precise shots, advancing quickly through the chaos. Danny and Joanna provided covering fire, forcing the remaining attackers to retreat. "They're falling back," Danny called out. "Let them run," John growled. "We've got what we came for." The ambush had failed, and the cartel was now on the defensive. The bikers regrouped and began their retreat, taking Max and the injured riders with them. Back at the ranch, the team assessed the situation. Travis confirmed that the cartel's tracking efforts had been disrupted. "They won't be able to follow us anymore," he said. "At least not with GPS." "Good," John replied. "But that won't stop them from trying other tactics. We've got to stay sharp." Joanna sighed and leaned against the barn wall. "This fight is escalating faster than we expected. They won't stop until one of us is gone." "Then we make sure it's not us," John said firmly. Emily hugged Max tightly, grateful that he had made it back safely. "You were amazing, Max. You saved everyone again." Max wagged his tail, his job done, for now. As night fell, the Hayes family and their allies knew that the fight was far from over. The cartel had shown they were willing to use every trick in the book, but John and his team were ready for whatever came next. Night had fallen over the ranch, casting long shadows across the fields. Despite the relative calm, tension hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. John stood on the porch of the ranch house, his eyes scanning the horizon. He knew the cartel wasn't finished. They had tasted defeat twice now, and soon they would retaliate with a vengeance. Max paced near the porch steps, restless but alert. Emily sat nearby, petting him to keep herself calm. "Do you think they'll come tonight?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," John replied. "But if they do, we'll be ready." Danny approached from the barn, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Scouts are posted along the perimeter. Nothing unusual so far," he reported. "But something feels off." "Yeah," John muttered. "They're too quiet. They're planning something." Miles away, the cartel leader paced inside a temporary base. He was furious after the failed ambush and the losses his men had suffered. Ortega, one of his top lieutenants, studied a tactical map spread out on a table. "They're dug in deep," Ortega said, tapping a point on the map near the Hayes Ranch. "Direct assaults haven't worked. But we have another option. Something they won't expect." The leader raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Ortega smirked. "We infiltrate. Quietly. We have a few locals in town under our control. They'll create distractions. Meanwhile, we'll send a small team to slip through their defenses. And then? We take out the dog," Ortega said coldly. "Without that K9, they lose their biggest advantage." The cartel leader's eyes gleamed with approval. "Do it. No mistakes this time." Later that night, small groups of cartel operatives disguised as workers moved into the surrounding area. They blended in, using back roads and hidden trails to avoid detection. Their goal was simple: eliminate Max and weaken the ranch's defenses from within. Around midnight, Travis's radio crackled with static. He had been monitoring drone footage of the surrounding area, and something wasn't right. "John, you there?" Travis whispered urgently over the comms. "Go ahead," John replied, stepping off the porch. "I've got movement near the east fence line. Looks like multiple heat signatures, but they're staying low." John's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to sneak in. Keep eyes on them. I'm on my way." He signaled to Danny and Joanna, who were stationed near the barn. "We've got intruders on the east side. Move quietly. We're not letting them get the jump on us." Danny nodded, grabbing his rifle. "Time to go hunting." The team moved silently through the fields, using the cover of darkness to stay hidden. Max walked beside John, his ears perked and his nose twitching as he picked up unfamiliar scents. They reached the eastern fence and crouched behind a line of trees. John whispered into the radio, "Travis, how many are we dealing with?" "At least 5, Travis replied. "They're spread out, looking for a way in." "Good. Let's give them a surprise." One of the cartel operatives crouched near the fence, cutting through the wire with a pair of bolt cutters. He didn't notice Max creeping silently through the tall grass. The dog pounced, knocking him to the ground with a ferocious growl. "Contact!" the man screamed, alerting the others. Gunfire erupted as the cartel team scrambled to defend themselves. Danny and Joanna opened fire from concealed positions, taking out 2 operatives before they could retaliate. "They're pinned down," Joanna reported over the radio. "Keep the pressure on them," John ordered. "Max, flush them out." Max darted through the chaos, targeting another cartel soldier who was trying to retreat. He tackled the man, disarming him in seconds. The remaining operatives, realizing they were outmatched, began to fall back. "This isn't over," one of them shouted as he fired blindly into the darkness. Danny smirked and fired a warning shot that shattered a nearby tree branch. "You're right. It's just getting started." The cartel team retreated, leaving behind their injured and their equipment. The bikers moved in to secure the area, tying up the captured operatives. With the immediate threat neutralized, John regrouped with his team near the barn. Max stood beside him, his fur slightly matted from the scuffle, but otherwise unharmed. "That was too easy," Danny said, frowning. "They didn't commit enough men for a real attack." They weren't here for a full assault, John replied. They were here for Max. Emily gasped. They wanted to hurt him? Yeah, John said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. They know he's our best defense. If they take him out, they think we'll be vulnerable. Joanna shook her head. They underestimated him again. Max isn't going down without a fight. John nodded. But they'll be back, and next time, they'll be smarter. We need to tighten security and stay alert. As they discussed their next move, one of the captured operatives unexpectedly spoke up. You're wasting your time, he said with a sneer. They already have people on the inside. You won't see the next attack coming? John's eyes narrowed. Inside? What do you mean? The man chuckled, but didn't elaborate. Danny grabbed him by the collar. Start talking, or we'll leave you out here with the dog. The man's smirk faltered, but he remained silent. He's bluffing, Joanna said. He's trying to rattle us. Maybe, John replied, but we can't take chances. From now on, no one outside this circle knows our plans. Later that night, Kara intercepted a new radio transmission. It was a recorded message from the cartel leader, directed at John. Mitchell, you think you've won because you've taken out a few of my men? You've only delayed the inevitable. We know your weaknesses. We know your family. And soon, you'll know what it feels like to lose everything. John listened silently, his jaw tightening. Danny crossed his arms. They're playing psychological games now. Let them, John said coldly. They'll learn soon enough that we don't scare easy. The message had been delivered, but it did little to shake the team's resolve. They had faced worse in their lifetimes. Together, with Max by their side, they prepared for the next battle. The cartel thought they were wearing them down. But in reality, the Hayes family and their allies were just getting started. The ranch was quiet again, but everyone knew it was only the calm before the storm. The cartel had failed twice now, and they wouldn't make the same mistakes again. John stood near the ranch's workshop with Danny, Joanna, and Travis, going over their strategy. The captured operatives had been taken into custody by local authorities, but the cartel's latest message still rang in John's ears. We know your family. Soon, you'll know what it feels like to lose everything. We can't just keep defending, Danny said. They'll hit us harder next time. We need to make the first move. John nodded. Agreed. We need to cripple their operations and make them think twice about coming back. I've been digging into their logistics, Travis said. They've got a supply depot about 30 miles south, hidden in the hills. Weapons, vehicles, communications equipment. It's a key point in their network. That's our target, John replied. If we destroy their supplies, they'll be weakened and forced to regroup. As the team prepared for the mission, Emily stayed near Max, who was resting on the porch. She had noticed something strange ever since the last attack. Max seemed more aware, almost like he knew what was coming. Mom always said you were special, she whispered, scratching behind his ears. But there's more to you, isn't there? She remembered a story her mother had once told her about how Max had been part of a secret military program. He wasn't just trained to protect, he had served in covert operations alongside elite units. Is that why they're afraid of you? Emily asked softly. Max huffed in response, almost as if acknowledging her words. Emily's curiosity grew, but she knew that whatever secrets Max held, they didn't change one thing. He would protect her no matter what. That evening, the team loaded their vehicles and headed out. Max rode in the lead truck with John, his head resting on Emily's lap. The convoy moved quietly through the back roads, their headlights dimmed to avoid detection. We'll hit the depot just before dawn, John explained over the radio. They won't expect an attack at that hour. Danny's voice crackled in reply. I like it. Hit them while they're half asleep. Joanna chuckled. Just don't wake them up too fast, Danny. Unbeknownst to the team, a hidden danger traveled with them. Earlier that day, one of the local workers hired to help reinforce the ranch had quietly passed intel to the cartel. The cartel knew the convoy was heading toward the depot and had prepared an ambush. As the convoy approached a narrow pass, Travis's drone picked up strange movement ahead. He spoke urgently over the radio. Hold up. I've got heat signatures up ahead, multiple vehicles and armed men. Ambush, John muttered, bringing the convoy to a halt. How the hell did they know? Danny asked angrily. Doesn't matter, John replied. We're not walking into their trap. Everyone, take defensive positions. The convoy quickly dispersed, taking cover behind rocks and hills. Max jumped out of the truck and stood beside John, his body tense and ready for action. The cartel's vehicles appeared at the far end of the pass, blocking the road. Armed men spread out, using the terrain to their advantage. "You've got nowhere to go, Mitchell," a voice shouted through a loudspeaker. "Surrender now, and maybe we'll let your people live." John gritted his teeth. Not happening. The cartel opened fire, and chaos erupted. The bikers returned fire from their cover, but the cartel had the advantage of higher ground. For a moment, it seemed like they were pinned down. Max, however, had other plans. At John's command, the dog sprinted through the crossfire, weaving between rocks and dodging bullets with an uncanny sense of awareness. He climbed a ridge and approached one of the cartel gunmen from behind. With a powerful leap, Max knocked the man to the ground, disarming him and sending his rifle clattering down the hill. The commotion distracted the other gunmen, allowing John and Danny to advance. "Max just gave us an opening," Danny yelled. "Move up." The bikers pushed forward, using the distraction to their advantage. Joanna took out another cartel enforcer with a precise shot, while Maddox lobbed a smoke grenade to cover their advance. The tide of the battle quickly shifted in favor of John's team. Realizing they were losing, the cartel enforcers began retreating toward their vehicles. The loudspeaker crackled again. "Fall back. Regroup at the secondary site." John wasn't about to let that happen. He signaled to Max, who darted toward the cartel leader's SUV. The dog leapt onto the hood, snarling fiercely, causing the driver to panic and crash into a boulder. John and Danny closed in, weapons drawn. The cartel leader stumbled out of the vehicle, hands raised in surrender. "Don't shoot," he pleaded. John grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the SUV. "You thought you could come after my family and get away with it?" The leader coughed, his eyes wide with fear. "It wasn't personal. We were just following orders." "Whose orders?" John demanded. I don't know his name. He's high up, someone with connections across the border. He's been watching you." John exchanged a glance with Danny. "We've got bigger problems than we thought," he muttered. With the remaining cartel enforcers in full retreat, the team planted explosives around the supply depot. Moments later, a series of deafening blasts shook the ground as flames engulfed the compound. Danny watched the inferno with a satisfied grin. "That should slow them down." John nodded, but remained cautious. "For now, but we've stirred up a hornet's nest. They'll come back with everything they've got." Joanna approached, wiping dirt from her face. "Then we'll be ready. We've come this far. No turning back now." Max barked in agreement, standing tall beside John. The dog had once again proven to be their greatest weapon and protector. As the convoy regrouped and prepared to return to the ranch, John knew one thing for certain. The cartel wouldn't stop until they were broken for good. But with his family, his allies, and Max by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. The team returned to the ranch under the cover of darkness, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust along the long gravel road. The glow of the destroyed depot still burned in John's mind as he parked the truck near the barn. They had dealt a major blow to the cartel's operations, but he knew it wouldn't stop them for long. Max jumped out of the truck and padded alongside Emily, who was waiting near the porch. Her face lit up with relief as she ran to meet him. "You're okay," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around Max's neck. John approached, exhaustion etched on his face. "We handled it, but things are going to get worse before they get better." Emily looked up at him. "They're coming back, aren't they?" "Yeah," John said quietly, "but we'll be ready." Inside the house, the team gathered around the dining room table to discuss their next move. Maps of the area were spread out, marked with key cartel locations. Travis adjusted his laptop, pulling up satellite images of the region. "Word's spreading fast," Travis reported. "I intercepted a few transmissions. They're scrambling to reorganize, but it looks like their boss, whoever's pulling the strings, has called in reinforcements. We're talking mercenaries, not just enforcers." Joanna leaned forward, her expression serious. "Great. As if cartel soldiers weren't bad enough, now we're dealing with professionals. We can't stay on defense forever," Danny said. We need to cut off their leadership, make them too weak to recover. John nodded. We'll take the fight to them. But first, we need to prepare the ranch for the next attack. If they think they can surround us, they've got another thing coming. As they discussed their plans, headlights appeared at the edge of the property. The bikers near the gate called in over the radio. John, we've got someone approaching. Says his name is Reyes, says you know him. John frowned and grabbed the radio. Reyes? The ex-operator? What the hell is he doing here? I guess we're about to find out, Danny muttered. Moments later, a tall, rugged man stepped out of a dusty pickup truck. His sharp eyes scanned the area as he approached the porch. John met him halfway. Reyes, John greeted cautiously. Didn't expect to see you here. Reyes shrugged. Word travels fast. I heard you stirred up the cartel, and I figured you could use a little help. These guys don't play fair, and I've been dealing with them for years. John crossed his arms. Why now? You've been off the grid for a while. Let's just say I have unfinished business with the people running this operation, Reyes replied. You've got their attention. If we don't shut them down soon, you're going to lose more than your ranch. Reluctantly, John nodded. All right, but you play by our rules. We've got civilians here, and I won't risk them. Understood, Reyes said, extending a hand. Let's finish this. The next few days passed with tense anticipation. The team fortified the ranch, setting up additional cameras, traps, and ambush points. Max patrolled the perimeter regularly, his instincts guiding him as if he knew an attack was imminent. Despite their precautions, everything seemed too quiet. Emily noticed it first. They're watching us, she said softly one evening as she sat with Max by the porch. John glanced at her. What do you mean? I don't know. I can feel it, she replied. Like someone's out there, waiting. John exchanged a look with Joanna, who nodded in agreement. She might be right. We haven't had any movement on the cameras, but that doesn't mean they aren't planning something. Travis's voice came over the radio. Hey, John, you might want to see this. I picked up a faint signal near the southern ridge. Something's pinging our system. Let's check it out, John said, grabbing his rifle. They drove to the ridge under the cover of darkness, with Max riding in the back of the truck. When they reached the area, Travis pointed toward a spot near a rocky outcrop. There, he said, shining a flashlight on a small device hidden beneath a pile of stones. A tracker, Danny muttered. They've been watching us this whole time. Which means they've got scouts nearby, John added. Max barked, his ears swiveling toward the darkness beyond the ridge. The team froze, listening intently. Footsteps. They're here, Joanna whispered. John signaled for the team to spread out. Max moved ahead, silently weaving between the rocks. Moments later, the team spotted two cartel scouts attempting to retreat. Freeze! John shouted, raising his weapon. The scouts hesitated for a moment before dropping their weapons. Danny moved in quickly, securing their hands with zip ties. Thought you could sneak around on our land? Danny growled. One of the scouts glared defiantly. You think you've won? You're just delaying the inevitable. Our boss is already planning something you can't stop. John stepped forward, his eyes cold. What plan? Speak. The scout smirked. You'll find out soon enough. As the team interrogated the scouts, Kara's voice came through the radio with urgency. John, we've got a problem. I intercepted a new transmission. They're not just planning another assault. They're mobilizing multiple teams to hit both your ranch and the surrounding towns. They want to take control of the entire region. Damn it, John muttered. We're running out of time, Reyes said. If they hit the towns, innocent people are going to get caught in the crossfire. We can't let that happen, John replied. We need to strike first, cripple their ability to mobilize. Joanna nodded. Then it's time to end this once and for all. The team knew the stakes had just been raised. They weren't just fighting to protect the ranch anymore. They were fighting to protect their entire community. The final confrontation was drawing closer, and with Max leading the charge, they were ready for war. The urgency in the air was palpable. The intercepted transmission confirmed what John and his team feared. The cartel was preparing a large-scale operation. They weren't just coming after the ranch. They intended to seize control of nearby towns, using terror to tighten their grip on the region. John gathered the team around the war room in the barn. Maps were pinned to the walls, showing key cartel routes and vulnerable points. Travis was updating their surveillance feed, and Kara's voice crackled over the speaker. "They've split their forces," she explained. "One team is heading toward the town of Dry Creek, and the other will hit your ranch as a diversion. If we don't act now, both places will be overrun." Danny clenched his fists. "We can't defend both places at once." "No," John agreed, his gaze hardening. "But we can outsmart them. We'll divide our forces too. Half will stay here to protect the ranch. The rest will ambush the team heading for Dry Creek. We hit them before they can reach the town." As the team prepared for battle, Emily approached John, her eyes determined. "I want to help," she said firmly. John shook his head. "Emily, it's too dangerous. You need to stay here with Max." "But I can do more than hide," she protested. "Max and I can patrol the ranch. We've trained for this. You've seen what he can do. He'll keep me safe." John hesitated, torn between protecting his niece and respecting her courage. Finally, he nodded. "All right, you stay here and work with Joanna. But if things get bad, you fall back to the safe room. Understood?" "Understood," Emily said, her voice steady. Max gave a low bark, standing proudly by her side. As the convoy prepared to head for Dry Creek, Reyes returned from a scouting mission with critical intel. "We've got a break," he said. "One of the cartel's lower commanders has flipped. He's willing to give us their exact attack plan in exchange for protection. How do we know we can trust him?" Joanna asked skeptically. "He's desperate," Reyes replied. "They burned his house down when he questioned orders. He's got nothing left." John nodded. "Bring him in. If he's telling the truth, it could change everything." The commander was brought to the ranch under heavy guard. Nervous and shaking, he revealed the cartel strategy in detail. "They're spread thinner than you think," he said. "They're relying on fear and shock tactics. If you hit their forward teams hard enough, the rest will pull back to regroup." "That's exactly what we needed," John said. "Thank you." Under cover of night, John's team moved swiftly toward Dry Creek. Max remained at the ranch, patrolling with Emily and Joanna. They reinforced every choke point and trap, preparing for the inevitable assault. Meanwhile, Danny, Maddox, and Reyes led the ambush team along a canyon trail where the cartel's convoy was expected to pass. The night was silent except for the occasional rustle of wind through the rocks. "They're close," Travis whispered over the radio. "Convoy's moving slow. Looks like 5 vehicles, heavily armed." "Positions," John ordered. The bikers took cover along the canyon walls, weapons ready. Danny grinned and whispered to Maddox, "I love this part. The calm before all hell breaks loose." Just as the convoy approached, Danny noticed something strange. The lead vehicle abruptly stopped, and several men climbed out, scanning the area with flashlights. "They know something's off," Danny muttered. "Did we trip a sensor?" Maddox asked. "Doesn't matter," John replied. "We stick to the plan." "Travis, are the charges ready?" "Ready and waiting," Travis confirmed. "Light it up," John ordered. Explosions tore through the canyon as the bikers triggered their traps. The lead vehicle was blown apart, and the convoy descended into chaos. "Go! Go!" Danny shouted, leading the charge. Gunfire erupted as the bikers attacked from both sides of the canyon. The cartel soldiers scrambled for cover, disoriented by the ambush. John moved with precision, taking out key targets while Reyes led a flanking maneuver. Just as it seemed the bikers had the upper hand, reinforcements arrived. More cartel vehicles roared into the canyon, pinning John's team between 2 fronts. "Reinforcements inbound," Travis called out. "Figures they'd have backup," Danny growled. "We're not giving them the upper hand." Reyes signaled to his men. "We've got explosives left. We'll block the exit behind them." "Do it," John said. A second series of blasts rocked the canyon, trapping the new convoy inside. The bikers pressed their attack, forcing the cartel soldiers to surrender or flee. Within minutes, the reinforcements were neutralized, and the canyon fell silent once more. Danny exhaled sharply. "That was close." "Too close," John agreed. "But we got them. The path to Dry Creek is secure." Back at the ranch, Emily and Joanna patrolled the perimeter with Max. The dog stopped suddenly, his ears perked. Emily followed his gaze toward the tree line. "You see something, Max?" she whispered. Max growled softly, his body tense. Moments later, they spotted movement. Cartel scouts creeping toward the fence. "Joanna, we've got company," Emily whispered urgently into the radio. "I see them," Joanna replied. "Stay low. We're about to get real busy." As the scouts approached, Max took point, silently maneuvering through the tall grass. The first scout didn't even see him coming. Max pounced, knocking the man unconscious before he could raise the alarm. Emily gripped her radio tightly. "They're trying to sneak in. We need backup." "You're the backup," Joanna said with a grin. "Let's show them who owns this place." Gunfire echoed across the ranch as the defenders engaged the intruders. Max continued to disrupt their formation, using hit-and-run tactics to sow confusion. The cartel's plan was falling apart, and soon, the remaining attackers retreated into the night. With both the ambush and the ranch defense successful, John's team regrouped at dawn. The cartel had suffered a crippling blow. "We did it," Danny said, clapping John on the back. "We shut them down." "For now," John replied. "But this isn't over until their leaders are finished." Emily knelt beside Max, hugging him tightly. "You were amazing, Max. You saved us again." Max barked softly, his job done, for now. The team knew the fight wasn't over, but for the first time, hope burned brighter than fear. They had sent a clear message. The cartel would never control this land. The sun rose over the ranch, casting a warm glow on the fields. Despite the calm morning, the team remained on edge. The cartel had been dealt two crippling defeats, the ambush near Dry Creek and the failed raid on the ranch. But John knew their enemy wouldn't give up that easily. This was a war of pride and power, and the cartel had one last move to make. John stood on the porch, his gaze scanning the horizon. Danny and Joanna joined him, both armed and ready. "They'll strike soon," John said quietly. "They've got nothing left to lose." Danny nodded. "Yeah, and that makes them dangerous." Joanna tapped her radio. "Kara's been monitoring chatter all morning. No clear signals yet, but something's brewing." Emily came out with Max at her side. "You think they'll come today?" she asked. John glanced at her and then at Max, whose sharp eyes scanned the tree line. "Yeah, today feels like the day." The morning dragged on without incident. No signs of cartel vehicles. No distant engine sounds. Even Kara reported minimal radio activity from the cartel's network. It was unsettling. Danny paced near the barn, restless. "I don't like this. They're too quiet." "Maybe they're regrouping farther south," Joanna suggested. "Or maybe they're setting a trap," John said grimly. Just as the tension became unbearable, Travis's voice came through the radio. "Hey, you guys might want to see this. We've got visitors." "Visitors?" John repeated, frowning. "Yeah, but they're not armed." John, Danny, and Joanna quickly moved to the front gate, where a small group of townsfolk had gathered. They looked nervous, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting danger. One of them, a middle-aged man named Sam who owned a diner in Dry Creek, stepped forward. "John, we need your help. The cartel sent a message this morning. They're demanding we hand over supplies and money by nightfall, or they'll start killing people." Danny cursed under his breath. "So that's their plan. They're holding the town hostage." John clenched his fists. "We can't let that happen. Sam, tell everyone to stay inside and lock their doors. We'll handle this." While John and his team prepared to move out, Reyes arrived with new intel. He had intercepted a private message between cartel commanders. "They don't have enough men to take Dry Creek," Reyes explained. "They're bluffing to scare the townsfolk into compliance. But they've set up a decoy operation in the hills, making it look like they're mobilizing a larger force." John's mind raced as he processed the information. "They're trying to split us up. If we take the bait and send most of our team to Dry Creek, they'll hit the ranch while we're gone." Danny gritted his teeth. "These bastards don't know when to quit." Joanna crossed her arms. "So, what's the play? Do we defend the ranch or save the town?" John's gaze hardened. "We do both. Reyes, take a small team to Dry Creek and dismantle their bluff. The rest of us stay here and prepare for their real attack." Reyes and his team left for Dry Creek, determined to stop the cartel's intimidation tactics. Meanwhile, John's crew fortified the ranch further. Hidden traps were set, ambush points reinforced, and drones patrolled the skies. Max, ever vigilant, walked the perimeter with Emily. "You're really good at this, Max," Emily whispered. "You always know when danger's coming." Max stopped suddenly, his ears twitching. He growled softly, signaling that something wasn't right. Emily looked around, her heart racing. "What is it, Max?" Before she could say anything else, Kara's voice crackled through the radio. "John, we've got movement, lots of it. They're coming." The cartel launched their assault from multiple directions. SUVs and trucks barreled toward the ranch, their headlights cutting through the dusk. Gunfire erupted as the cartel's soldiers attempted to breach the fences. "Positions!" John shouted. "Hold the line." The bikers and defenders returned fire from behind cover. Explosions rocked the fields as tripwires and landmines detonated, throwing the attackers into disarray. "Max, stay with Emily," John ordered as he fired off another round. Danny and Joanna flanked the attackers, picking off key targets to disrupt their advance. Maddox lobbed a grenade into a cluster of vehicles, creating a fiery blockade. "They're hitting us hard," Danny yelled. "Let them," John growled. "They want to fight? They'll get one." Max stayed close to Emily, leading her toward the reinforced barn. But as they moved, a group of cartel soldiers broke through a weak point in the fence. "There's the girl," one of them shouted. Emily's eyes widened in fear, but Max didn't hesitate. He charged the men, knocking one to the ground and biting the arm of another. Emily ran for cover as Max fought to protect her. "Max!" she cried out. Just when it seemed the cartel might overwhelm the ranch, a new sound filled the air, the roar of engines. Reyes and his team returned, having successfully dismantled the cartel's bluff in Dry Creek. They stormed into the fray, flanking the attackers from behind. "Hope you saved some for us," Reyes shouted as he fired into the enemy ranks. The cartel soldiers, caught between two fronts, panicked and began retreating. Max chased off the last few attackers, ensuring they wouldn't regroup. "We've got them on the run," Joanna yelled. "Don't let up," John ordered. Within minutes, the remaining cartel forces were either captured or fleeing into the night. The battle was over. As dawn broke, the team surveyed the battlefield. Smoke rose from destroyed vehicles, and the scent of gunpowder lingered in the air. Despite the damage, the ranch still stood, and their community had been protected. Danny wiped sweat from his brow. "We did it. We broke them." "For now," John said, "but we need to make sure they never come back." Reyes approached, shaking John's hand. "You've got a hell of a team here. The cartel won't recover from this." Emily hugged Max tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. "You saved me again," she whispered. Max licked her cheek, his tail wagging gently. The team gathered near the porch as the sun rose higher. They had faced overwhelming odds and won, but they knew this wasn't just about defending a ranch anymore. They had sent a message to the cartel and anyone else who thought they could terrorize their community. "This is our land, and we won't back down." Though dawn brought a temporary calm, John knew the war was not over. The cartel might have been beaten back, but their network was vast. Somewhere out there, their real leader, the one coordinating these attacks, was still pulling strings. If they didn't end this now, the cartel would keep coming until the entire region was under their control. At breakfast, the team gathered to discuss their next move. Emily sat close to Max, who rested beside her. The atmosphere was tense, with exhaustion and anticipation hanging in the air. Danny broke the silence. "They're not going to sit on their hands after last night," he said. "We hurt them bad, but we didn't kill the beast." John nodded. "Which is why we have to find their leader. If we take him out, the rest will collapse." "Reyes," Joanna said, turning to the ex-operator. "You've dealt with these guys before. What's our best shot?" Reyes folded his arms. "They're moving their remaining forces to a fortified safe house near the border. It's heavily guarded, but if we hit them hard enough, we can finish this." "Then we finish it," John said. As preparations began for the final assault, Travis pulled John aside with urgent news. "Hey, I've been going through the drone footage from last night," Travis said. "You're not going to like what I found." He showed John a clip of the firefight. One of their newer recruits, a man named Carl, could be seen slipping away from his position during the battle and meeting with a cartel scout. The two exchanged brief words before Carl vanished into the night. "We've got a traitor," Travis said. John clenched his jaw. "Where is he now?" "Disappeared right after the fight," Travis replied. Danny overheard the conversation and cursed. "That explains how they've been one step ahead. He's been feeding them intel." John took a deep breath. "If he's still out there, he'll try to warn them about our plans. We need to move fast." Determined to stop Carl before he could alert the cartel, John and Danny set out with Max leading the way. They followed tracks that led into a wooded area near the edge of the ranch. Max sniffed the ground. His ears perked as he caught the scent. "He's close," Danny whispered. Max barked softly and darted forward, guiding them toward a small clearing. There, they spotted Carl meeting with another cartel operative. "We found them," John muttered. Carl was frantically handing over a map of the ranch's defenses when Max charged out of the shadows. The cartel operative panicked and fled into the woods, but Max cornered Carl, growling fiercely. "Don't move," John ordered, stepping into the clearing with his weapon drawn. Carl raised his hands, his face pale. "John, I can explain." "Don't bother," John interrupted. "You betrayed us. How much did they pay you?" "They threatened my family," Carl pleaded. "I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice," Danny growled, "and now you'll pay for it." Carl was restrained and taken back to the ranch, where he would face the consequences. With the traitor neutralized, John knew it was time to make their final move. Later that day, the team assembled near the barn. Reyes laid out a map of the cartel's safe house on a table. "Their leader, Alvarez, will be holed up here," Reyes explained, pointing to a central building. "They've got fortified walls, sniper positions, and at least 30 men guarding the perimeter. This isn't going to be easy." "We'll split into 2 teams," John said. "One team creates a diversion at the main gate, while the other breaches from the rear. We take out their command center and neutralize Alvarez." Danny grinned. "Sounds like a party." Joanna nodded. "Let's end this." The convoy moved out under the cover of darkness. Max rode with John and Emily in the lead truck, his body tense and alert. The plan was simple, but they all knew the risks. As they approached the safe house, Reyes's team took position near the main gate, planting explosives on key structures. At John's signal, the charges detonated, creating a massive explosion that rocked the compound. "Go, go, go!" Reyes shouted, leading his team into a firefight with the cartel guards. John's team used the chaos to infiltrate from the rear. Max guided them through narrow corridors, his instincts sharp as they encountered minimal resistance. "This feels too easy," Joanna whispered. "They're up to something," John muttered. As they approached the command center, they found it eerily quiet. The doors were unlocked, and there were no guards in sight. "This doesn't make sense," Danny said, his weapon raised. John signaled for caution. "Stay sharp. It's a trap." Suddenly, the doors slammed shut behind them, and automated gunfire erupted from hidden turrets. The team scrambled for cover as bullets ricocheted off the walls. "Ambush!" Joanna yelled. "We need to disable those turrets." John shouted. "Travis, can you hack them?" "Give me a minute." Travis replied, frantically working on his tablet. Max barked and sprinted toward a control panel on the far wall. Emily had trained him for moments like this. He leapt onto the console, pawing at the switches until the turrets powered down. "Good boy, Max." Emily cheered over the radio. "Turrets are offline," Travis confirmed. With the trap neutralized, the team pushed forward into Alvarez's command room. The cartel leader stood defiantly, flanked by his remaining guards. "It's over, Alvarez," John said coldly. "Your men are either dead or running. Surrender." Alvarez sneered. "You think you've won? Kill me, and another will take my place. You can't stop this machine." "We'll see about that," John replied. A fierce firefight erupted. Max leapt into action, taking down one of the guards while Joanna and Danny provided cover fire. Within minutes, Alvarez was subdued and disarmed. The battle was over. Alvarez and his surviving men were taken into custody, and the cartel's safe house was destroyed. Back at the ranch, The team celebrated their hard-fought victory. The threat that had loomed over their lives for months was finally gone. "You did good, John," Reyes said, shaking his hand. "You saved a lot of people." John nodded. "We all did." Emily hugged Max tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. "It's over, Max. We're safe now." Max wagged his tail, his job as protector finally complete. The Hayes family and their allies had won the battle for their land and their community. They had sent a message that would echo far beyond Dry Creek. This was their home, and no one would take it from them. The ranch was quiet, a serene contrast to the chaos of the last few weeks. The early morning sun painted the fields in gold, and for the first time in months, there were no sounds of gunfire, no distant engines signaling danger. The cartel had been shattered, their leader captured, and their operations crippled. Life at the Hayes Ranch could finally return to normal, or as close to normal as possible after all they had been through. John stood near the barn, watching as Emily and Max played in the distance. Max barked playfully, chasing after a stick Emily had thrown. The dog no longer carried the burden of constant vigilance. For now, he could simply enjoy being her protector and friend. Danny approached, coffee in hand. "You know, I'm still getting used to the quiet," he said. "Feels strange." John chuckled softly. "Yeah, I keep expecting something to go wrong." Danny nodded. "Old habits die hard. But I think we earned this break." "You sure Alvarez's people won't try to rebuild?" Reyes said the cartel's network was too fractured to recover anytime soon, John replied. "They'll be busy cleaning up their own mess for years. If anyone comes sniffing around again, we'll be ready." Later that morning, Reyes arrived with good news. His contacts within law enforcement had secured a formal investigation into the cartel's remaining operations in the area. Local authorities were finally stepping up, now that the worst of the danger had passed. "You did more than just defend your land, John," Reyes said. "You exposed a major criminal network. The town's safer because of you and your team." "It wasn't just me," John replied. "We couldn't have done it without everyone pulling together." Reyes smiled. "Well, now that things have settled down, I've got a proposal. The government's putting together a task force to handle cases like this. They need experienced people like you and Danny." Danny raised an eyebrow. "You want us to join some covert cleanup crew?" "Something like that," Reyes said. "Think about it. You've got a knack for protecting people." John considered the offer, but shook his head. "I've had enough fighting. This ranch is my home, and my family comes first. But if you ever need a safe place to regroup, you know where to find us." "Fair enough," Reyes said, shaking his hand. That evening, the townsfolk of Dry Creek gathered at the ranch to celebrate. The barn was decorated with string lights, and tables were set up with food and drinks. Music played softly as neighbors shared stories of the recent battles and the courage of those who had stood against the cartel. Emily ran around with other children, laughing freely for the first time in weeks. Max followed close behind, wagging his tail as he kept watch over her. Joanna clinked her glass against Danny's. "We did it, huh? Against all odds." "Yeah," Danny said, smiling. "Never thought I'd be sticking around a place like this, but it's starting to feel like home." Joanna nodded. "We've built something here, something worth protecting." John addressed the crowd, raising a glass. "We fought hard to protect what's ours, and we won. But we didn't do it alone. Everyone here played a part. This land is stronger because of the people standing together to defend it." Cheers erupted as the crowd raised their glasses in unison. The community had survived, united by a shared struggle and a newfound strength. As the celebration continued, Kara pulled John aside. "Hey, I thought you'd want to see this," she said, handing him a satellite image. "What am I looking at?" John asked, frowning. "The cartel's leadership structure was deeper than we thought," Kara explained. "There's chatter about someone higher up, someone who might have been funding Alvarez. We don't have a name yet, but they've gone quiet since the safe house was destroyed." John exhaled slowly. "So, there's still a threat out there." "Maybe," Kara said. "But for now, they're licking their wounds. You've got time to prepare if they ever come back." John nodded. "We'll keep our guard up. Always." Later that night, Emily sat by the bonfire, petting Max's thick fur. A group of children gathered around her, eager to hear the story of how Max had saved the ranch. "Is it true Max took down 5 cartel guys all by himself?" one boy asked excitedly. Emily giggled. "Well, maybe not 5 at once, but he's pretty amazing. My mom trained him when she was in the Marines. He's got military training, and he always knows when something's wrong." Max perked up, as if he understood he was being praised. He barked playfully, earning laughs from the kids. "You're a hero, Max," another child declared. Max wagged his tail and leaned into Emily's embrace. For the people of Dry Creek, he wasn't just a dog. He was a symbol of loyalty, bravery, and the unbreakable bond between family and protector. As the night wound down, John stood quietly by the fence, watching the stars. Joanna joined him, her hands stuffed in her jacket pockets. "You're thinking about what's next, aren't you?" she asked. "Always," John replied. "But for now, I'm just grateful. We've got peace. That's more than I could have hoped for a few weeks ago." "You deserve it," Joanna said softly. "We all do." In the distance, Emily's laughter echoed as she played with Max. The ranch was safe, and the future seemed brighter than ever. Together, they had overcome impossible odds. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, John knew they would face them with the same unyielding spirit that had brought them through the darkest days.